What's up, Berean Talk family? It is your boy Christian coming at you with another episode of Berean Talk. You already know why you're here. I'm gonna be honest. You've already seen the title. You might be a little bit confused. Maybe you think that you kind of already know what agenda, quote unquote, I've decided to go with, and you don't. And I'm going to be honest with you all. This might be one of the hardest / most embarrassing videos I've ever done, but it needs to be done. Because, well, you'll see. Stay tuned.
All power to the people! 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 No justice! No peace! No justice! No peace! No justice! No peace! Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the revolution!
You will not be able to stay home, brother. You will not be able to plug in, turn on, and cop out. You will not be able to lose yourself on Skag and skip out for beer during commercials because the revolution will not be televised. The revolution will not be televised. The revolution will not be brought to you by Xerox in 4 parts without commercial interruptions. The revolution will not show you pictures.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, what's going on? I hope you all are having a great day so far. You clicked on the video, so I appreciate that. Number one, I want to say, if I haven't already, thank you so much for everybody helping me to get finally to the 100 subscribers mark. That is a very big milestone for me, and I'm thankful to each and every one of you that have continued to show love and support for what I'm trying to build here. Not just for myself, but for the message that's being conveyed that I feel like is going to help a lot of people in a plethora of different ways. But we're here to talk about confronting my xenophobia. What in the world am I talking about? Am I going full on far left liberal? Have I completely lost it? The man's been talking about reparations and black people, and now he's talking about xenophobia. No, that's not what's happening here. This is just about speaking the truth. There have been a lot of accusations floating around about me about what my intentions are with this show, what I intend on doing, or what I'm trying to even do. And the fact of the matter is, this is just about telling the truth. And that's what the show will always be about. And if it's ever not about that, I hope that those of you all that are invested in what this show stands for, and those that are close to me, would be the first ones to be like, you slipping, big dog. But let's get right into it. Confronting my xenophobia. What does that even mean? So before we even really get into what I'm talking about today, let's just, because you know what this is. This is the Berean Talk show. And we like to make sure that we understand certain things. We like to define our terms. And so let's just look at what exactly xenophobia is from the Oxford Dictionary. Let's just do that real quick. A dislike of or prejudice against people from other countries. Now, when we're talking about this word, of course, it's been used in the context of talking about Muslims, talking about immigrants, talking about really, quite frankly, things that are considered outside of the norm of, quite frankly, American society, because that's usually what we're talking about. And in this particular episode, I am talking about Islamophobia specifically. Let me give you some background, right? So a lot of you all know, and I've said this before, that I was raised in a very conservative, very much majority white environment. And in that environment, it's predominantly evangelical Christian. And one of the handicaps of the Christian religion, and no, I don't consider myself a Christian. That's a whole nother video that I would have to do. Doesn't mean that I'm walking away from the faith. It just means that I don't prescribe to a religion. But one of the handicaps about the Christian religion is that anything outside of the Christian religion is sometimes considered scary. And when it comes to the Islamic religion, that is exactly what happens. And it's interesting because it wasn't always like that for me. I remember from when I was about 6 years old, I had a very close friend who came over to my parents' home, and we hung out. We did homework together. We did science experiments for projects and things. And his family was devout Muslim, but we were close. Our mothers were actually very close friends. They were great friends. And never once were we mistreated by them. Never once did we experience any type of prejudice or racism, or even feel unsafe for that matter. But I remember as I got older, being around this predominantly white, predominantly evangelical crowd. Again, this isn't me being racist. This is just an objective observation. One of the things and one of the common mantras in that circle is that Islam is a religion of hate, that it's a religion of violence, that the people in it are violent, and that they're just waiting to kill you unless you convert to Islam. And the unfortunate part about that is, as a kid, when you have an impressionable mind, you begin to believe those things. When you are shown footage of 9/11 and then shown pictures of men in turbans, and then, of course, Osama bin Laden's infamous picture, of course, these images get imprinted into your mind, causing this fear of a group of people that prescribe to a particular faith. And in some cases, you don't really have any good reasoning for it, but you see a lot of things in the media. I'm not even going to discuss how ironic that is, but we're going to keep moving forward. So I remember, and again, this is very hard for me to do and a bit embarrassing, but again, like I said, somebody needs to do it. I remember when I was about, I want to say about 16. And up until this point, my family and I, we were keeping the Sabbath. We still do. And we would sit around what's called the midrash table, which is really just the kitchen table, but we would have a midrash, which is studying the Torah portion. And often in these Torah discussions, at some point, the Islamic religion would come up, and somebody would have some post that they found on Facebook, or maybe a story about how some Islamic extremist blew something up, killed some people, committed a stabbing. And of course, when you're talking about in the Hebrew roots movement, and for those of you all that don't know what that is a movement where many evangelical Christians are understanding the Hebraic, or some people would even say the Jewish roots of their faith. And so a lot of people that consider themselves followers of Christ or Yeshua begin to adopt those elements of the Hebrew faith because it's in scripture. And oftentimes when we would have these discussions, Islam would come up and somebody would have something to say, especially about things happening in Israel, whether it was rockets getting fired, whether it was a stabbing, whether it was some form of an attack. It was always talked about. And what I didn't realize was that there was a level of fear mongering that was happening during these discussions on a weekly basis, and sometimes even a bi-weekly basis. And I remember just being inundated with that over and over and over again every single week, to the point where I was about 16 years old, and it was my younger brother, one of my cousins, And we were out on a trail that's here in Fayetteville. And we were just walking. And there was a family who was clearly Muslim. The women were wearing hijabs and the men were there. They also had and I don't want to be disrespectful, I'm not sure what the garment would be called, but they were wearing these long garments, which are actually quite beautiful. But they were walking together as a family. And it was 2 women with strollers and 2 men. And for those of you all that don't know what these are, I wear something on my jeans. I don't know if you can see these, but they're called tzitzits. And tzitzits, if you want to know what those are, you can look that up in Numbers chapter 15. It's the 4 tassels of blue that you wear on the corners of your garment. And because I had been told over and over and over again that Muslims were evil, Muslims were violent, Muslims were waiting to kill Jews because they fire rockets at Israel. And again, this is a true story. This family that was just walking by and minding their business. And what's even worse was they were speaking in Arabic. Again, this is how I was thinking. I took my tzitzits, these tassels that God has commanded us to wear to remind us to keep his commandments. I hid them in my pockets because I quite literally, not even figuratively, I quite literally thought that because they saw these tzitzits, or maybe if they saw my tzitzits, that they would harm me or harass me. Now, let's fast forward a little bit. Now it's 2017. I'm 17 years old. I've already been out of high school now for a little over a year. And I'm going over to Israel. And which is why I'm actually wearing this hoodie right now. Shout out to BGU, Ben Gurion University, when I went over there to go study, and all of the amazing people that I met over there. But my first day there, got there from the airport, landed in Tel Aviv. We took a bus. We're going down to the dorms where we're going to be staying for the next, or at least for me, for the next month and a half. And I left a bag with one of my classmates who lived in a different dorm. And again, mind you, I'm in Israel now. So now this is completely new territory. And one of the funny things about it is that if you don't know this, that in the Hebrew roots movement, or even in evangelical Christianity, Israel is painted as this God-loving, Torah-following utopia where everyone eats kosher and keeps Shabbat and loves each other if they're Jewish. Of course, that's not necessarily the case. Now, there's some beautiful people in Israel, but that's not necessarily the case. But that's, again, that's another video for another time. But I left a bag with one of my classmates, and I had to go to a different dorm to get it. And I walk into the dorm, and there's 3 guys in there who are all Arab looking, and my white classmate who is American. So I'm talking to my classmate, and these guys begin to speak to me, and they looked at my tzitzits, and they asked me, and they said, "Hey, are you Jewish?" And I said, "Well, no, not really, but I identify with the faith of the scriptures, of the Hebrew scriptures." And they said, "Wow, that's amazing." They got excited. They said, "Wow, that's amazing. We're Muslim." And when I tell you, there was literally a fear that came over me. And I was scared to death. I'm not even lying to you. My heart started beating fast. Had a little light sweat coming over my forehead. And once again, because I had heard that there was a stabbing not too long before, and because every week during the Sabbath, I was hearing about how violent these Arab Muslims were and how they were terrorists. In the midst of these three gentlemen who have been nothing but kind to me, I began to take my hands and cover my seats and kind of try to back out of the room. But you want to hear something funny? They wouldn't let me leave. Not because they were planning something. They were cooking lunch. And they asked me if I was hungry. And turned out I hadn't eaten all day. They offered me something to eat. Offered me something to drink. Ice cold Diet Coke. You feel me? Came out with the cold beverages. And they sat me down and they were so hospitable. They were so kind. They were asking me a lot of questions about what it's like to live in America. They invited me to come back over to the dorms and smoke hookah with them. And it was at that moment that I realized I think that I'm being lied to. And fast forward throughout the trip, what was very interesting was that for me, as somebody who was Torah observant, so to speak, my main goal or my main want and desire, because I had been told that Israel was this spiritual utopia. So I figured that any Jew that I turned to would automatically welcome me in because we worship the same God. We worship the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. What's very interesting is I wasn't welcomed. As a matter of fact, the more religious that particular Jewish person was, the more hostile they were to me. The more insulting they were to me. I can tell you on a regular basis that I was called a Gentile, which I find extremely offensive. And if you read scripture, you understand that to call somebody that has already either been grafted in or who is Israel, to call somebody a Gentile is like calling somebody a dog. And that's how they would say it to me. And that was constantly being reminded by Jews, not Muslims, but Jews. You're not one of us. Now, you can call this anti-Semitic if you want to, but this is the truth. And you can't tell me that I didn't experience what I experienced. I remember that I would walk through the streets of Jerusalem, quite literally. And people would literally look at me and then look at my tzitzits and scowl at me. Was it because I looked American? Was it because I was a black man wearing tzitzits? Was it because I'm not sure what it was. But I didn't feel welcome. But throughout the trip, there were people that were considered more secular Jews. They accepted me. They were kind to me. They were hospitable. Every Arab that I met over there was hospitable, offering me something to eat, offering me something to drink, offering to just sit down and have a conversation, offering, shall we say, to take in a stranger. And what's interesting is that there are commandments in the word, in Torah, that talk about how you're supposed to treat strangers. And how God constantly reminds Israel that you don't mistreat strangers because you were once strangers in Egypt. And yet that was my experience with people that I called my brothers and sisters. Now, why am I even sharing this? So what? You met a couple of nice Muslims, right? Well, here's the problem, ladies and gentlemen. When I came home from Israel, I was meeting more people from all different walks of life. And I was meeting more people that were Muslim. And come to find out, a lot of them believe a lot of the same things that I did. Yeah, we don't believe everything the same, but there were a lot of similarities. And I don't mean just in just head knowledge belief, but I mean in the fruit that they bore. The love, the joy, the peace, the patience, the kindness, the goodness, faithfulness, self-control. You know, fruit of the Spirit. I was getting more of that from people that were terrorists than I was the people that quite literally would banner the name of the God of Israel. So fast forward, right? It's now 2018. I've come home, and one of my cousins invited me out to a little get together at a friend's house. And this part right here that I'm about to tell you is why this is so dangerous. We were inside having a good time, chopping it up, making jokes, laughing. And there was a young man that came in there who was Caucasian and who was also homeschooled. This is important to the story. This young man at the time was a volunteer firefighter who had prospects of joining the military. Interestingly enough, there was a member of the military that was in there who was about our age and maybe his early, maybe even mid-20s, who was an active member of the U.S. Armed Forces, who had been on a couple of tours in, I believe, in Iraq and Afghanistan and such. Now, what was interesting was that even though he was a member of the United States military, he had some reservations about the United States militarism, the empire that is America, going around from nation to nation and being a purveyor of violence, if I could put it in the words of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. But this young man, who was about somewhere between 16 and 18, was very bent on joining the military and fighting for our freedom. And this guy that was the active military member was advising him that, yeah, you know, it's an honorable calling. It's an honorable occupation, so to speak. But be very careful about what you intend on doing, because everything that the U.S. military does isn't necessarily honorable. And at one point, this guy asks the young man, he says, hey, so what is your reasoning? What is your why for why you want to join the military? And this young man said, because of 9/11. It's a little odd. You weren't really around for 9/11. Well, maybe he has a parent that was affected by that. Nah, he didn't have a parent affected by that. Now, he had a parent that was in the military, his father, but he wasn't directly affected. Matter of fact, he didn't enlist until after 9/11. And what's even more interesting is, at this point in time, the supposed perpetrator of 9/11, Osama bin Laden, was dead. So what's the point? Right? If we're just objectively speaking here, if we're just being honest, what's the point? And this young man said something that was so honest and so disturbing. And the guy goes, the guy that's active military asks him, he says, well, you weren't really around for 9/11 and Osama bin Laden is dead. So what exactly is it that you intend on doing over there? And this young man, of course, gives the stereotypical all-American answer, which is, protecting our country, protecting our freedom. And this guy who is active military says, yes, that's true, but there are innocent lives that have been taken in other countries, innocent children whose lives have been eviscerated because of now a 20-year war. And this young man said, yes, but we need to put American lives first. Then there's like this record scratch moment, and the room kind of gets quiet. And the active member of the military asks the young man, are you saying or suggesting that American lives are more important or worth more than that of those in the Middle East, that of those in Iraq and Afghanistan? And the young man said yes. That's not paraphrasing. That is a verbatim statement. This young man said, he went on to add that, yeah, Arab and Muslim lives don't matter as much as American lives because they're terrorists. Now, ladies and gentlemen, that was about 5 years ago. So there's a high chance that this young man is enlisted in our armed forces, praising the Lord and passing the ammunition. But what's worse about that is that I know personally that there are thousands of more young men and young women just like them. And they don't look like, I almost said they don't look like the people that stormed the Capitol, but that's exactly what they look like. But that's a whole nother conversation. He didn't look crazy. He didn't run around burning crosses and wearing a hood. He didn't look like a war criminal. He just looked like a young man that loved his country. Let me take it a step further. While that's going on, right? So you have the young man, and hopefully you all are understanding what I'm trying to convey to you. While that's going on, I had the opportunity to meet a lot of other people, a lot of leaders and teachers in the Hebrew roots movement, in evangelical circles. And I remember at one point there was a particular teacher, and I will never say who this is, who is a very well-known teacher who loves the state of Israel. Because he's also one of those people that believes that if we bless the secular Zionist state of Israel, that you will be blessed. And that the people that are over there right now are the true Israel. And once they get their act together, that's when the Messiah can come back. Even though there are like 10 other tribes. I don't know why people think that. Anyway. And I remember I was scrolling through Facebook one day. And for those of you all that may or may not know, there's a lot of conflict in Israel between Israel and some groups like Hamas and a lot of other things going on that I don't even necessarily understand. But here in America and in the Hebrew roots movement and in evangelical circles, anyone that fights against the Israeli government is automatically considered a God-hating heathen who is thirsty for the blood of Jews. That's how they usually describe it. And I remember I was scrolling through my feed one day, and this was probably, I want to say, about a year or two ago. Scrolling through my feed one day, and I saw an image that I believe was blurred out by Facebook. You know, usually when they say like some content might be inappropriate for some users or something. And I open the photo, and it is a bloody corpse that has clearly been shot of a young Arab man that is somewhere between 18 to 20 years old, maybe even 16, 17 years old, in his late teens. And it's quite obvious that this is a corpse. This isn't somebody that had gotten injured and, was getting the help they needed. This is a corpse. And apparently, allegedly, he had done something or attacked an IDF soldier or an Israeli civilian, but he was Arab. And this particular teacher had posted this bloody corpse on his Facebook page with the caption that said something like, and if I can remember, I get this correctly, "That's what he gets," or "That's what that dog deserved." Again, this isn't a random. This isn't somebody that has no influence. This particular person has thousands upon thousands of people that support, love them. They even have some great teachings that I like. But posted the corpse of a young man, maybe even a child, and said, "That's what they get." And what was more disturbing than that was the fact that there was a lot of thumbs up and likes and hearts. That's not a heart, that's a circle. This is a heart. Under that particular post. And people posting Israeli flags and pray for the people of Israel, pray for the peace of Jerusalem. And quite literally finding joy in their eyes in the death of the wicked. But somewhere I read, I'm being facetious when I say this, but somewhere I read that God finds no pleasure in the death of the wicked. So if the Most High doesn't find if the Most High doesn't find pleasure in the death of the wicked, my goodness, what does that make you? Because of a religion. I have people that I have literally seen get upset at different events and feast days if they see somebody that has an article of clothing that has words in the Arabic language on it. Don't even know what it says. Don't know what it means. The Arabic language is scary to you. People that are Arab, that worship the way that they do, that's scary to you. And you justify murder, quite literally. Justify abuse, justify wickedness, justify something that the Father would call an abomination because it's not something that you're familiar with. Or maybe because you watch too much Sean Hannity and Tucker Carlson. Or Candace Owens. Or Officer Tatum. Or a plethora of other conservative talking heads. I say this to some churches. I say this to some small fellowship groups. I say this to any synagogues that need to hear this. And if this doesn't apply to you, then don't worry about it. But a lot of you are raising monsters. You're training monsters. And somehow we're just supposed to be okay with it. And here's the funny thing. As I mentioned before, I was in the land of the Jews. But the Arabs were the ones that took me in, even though I begged my fellow Jewish brothers and sisters. When I tried to explain to them, we worship the same God. We worship the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. Why is there this conflict? Why do you treat me like an outsider? Why do you treat me like a second-class citizen? And their response was, you're not one of us. I have family that is a part of the Islamic faith who have demonstrated and bear more of the fruit of the Spirit than I've ever seen some church members. Ever seen anybody that keeps Shabbat or a kosher diet? Because my Bible says ye shall know them by their fruit, not their foliage. Ladies and gentlemen, this is a problem. This is a problem. And it's disturbing how normalized this is. This isn't biblical. This is American. Don't get it twisted. The God of Israel isn't the God of the United States. That would be Baal. Yeah, I got another video coming on that. Don't worry. I got you. But ladies and gentlemen, we have to deal with this. And as I've said before, I will say it again, and I will continue to say it. Make sure people don't hate Christ because of you. Not because of the light, quote unquote, that you think that you bear, but because of the stench that's on you, but because of the hypocrisy that people observe, but because of the darkness that's inside of you. And if the light inside of you is darkness, how dark is that darkness? So ladies and gentlemen, I wanted to bring that to you because I wanted to give you all something to think about. The word says to not take the Lord's name in vain. And yes, we have a sophomoric understanding of that, which is don't literally use God's name in a way that's disrespectful. But I submit to you that taking the Lord's name in vain means to banner his name throughout the earth and then to live like you don't even know him. Banner his name throughout the earth and commit murder and adultery and idolatry, backbiting, and on the list goes. It's okay to murder Muslims. It's okay to hate people when they don't stand up for the Asherah pole. I mean the American flag. But somehow, people that I call my brothers and sisters are telling me I'm an outsider. People that I call brothers and sisters are telling me to go back to Africa. I was told to go back to Africa last week. That is not even a joke. I wish I was lying to you. That's why I made that video. It's not a one-time thing. This is ongoing wickedness that is applauded and praised. And I'm not saying this goes for every church, but for some of you, the devil isn't scared of your bodies of worship. He takes a front row seat for the sermon. So ladies and gentlemen, for those of you all that this was for, some of you I hope were encouraged. Some of you I hope were rebuked if you needed it. Some of you I hope were inspired that if you are already striving to make sure that you treat the least of these well, to treat the least of these with honor and dignity and equity and respect and love and kindness. If you're choosing to operate in that manner, keep doing what you're doing. I applaud you for that. And those of you that are part of the Muslim faith, I would like to say this. Number one, I want to apologize for misrepresenting my Messiah in such a way that I've made him a stench in your nostrils. For perpetuating stereotypes that have caused the rationalization of genocide against some of your people. And thinking of your lives as less than a human life. And as a black man in America, as somebody who is ADOS, we're all too familiar with what it means to be 3/5 of a human being. And I apologize. So with that, ladies and gentlemen, I hope you enjoyed it. And if you didn't, well, search the scriptures and search your heart. Don't worry about me. Just ask the God that you worship. What is it in your life that is causing people to find the idea of the God of Israel and the Messiah repulsive? Pieces and blessings.
You didn't say I'm out.
I'm out.
The revolution will not go better with coke. The revolution will not fight germs that may cause bad breath. The revolution will put you in the driver's seat. The revolution will not be televised, will not be televised, will not be televised, will not be televised. The revolution will be no rerun, brothers. The revolution will be live.